Your present is delayed, and I want to give it to you sooner, said the stranger, looking out of the window through the blinds. How do kids run around in this heat? Don't they often play at home at this time? The stranger continues to say as he waits for his package and watches the children in the street. It turns out to be a gray-haired woman chatting with her employee. Ji-hwa, tell the kids to go back to the building when you leave, the woman said as she continued to look out the window. Okay, replied the man while reading a message that came on his phone. Sorry, you must be in a lousy mood today? She asked, no longer looking at him. No, it's fine, replied a man with a radiant smile on his face. The man's name is Ji-hwa, 26 years old, a graduate of Inyang Children's Center. That's not okay. You're an only child and your teacher, Ji-hwa, is very worried about you, the woman reassured with her hand on the hero's shoulder. The others didn't come? He asked sadly. You know, unfortunately even Suwa was coming back, towards the end of last year, said the woman looking at the picture of happy people. That was a long time ago, so they're doing great now. I hope Ji-hwa is doing well too, the woman said as she turned away from him. The protagonist himself looked at the woman in amazement. Ji-hwa started looking around the corners of the rooms and thinking what to say. Maybe the reason I'm visiting you, and the fact that I'm your only visitor. Because I'm the only one who couldn't get a job in the end, he said to the woman with a dash of anger. Sorry. I can help you find a great job, the woman said cheerfully and took the boy's hands. But since you're a good person, then everything will be fine soon. If Ji-hwa can prepare and pass the interview and get that great job he's been dreaming of, the woman said a little sarcastically with a smile on her face. And then the main character of this tittle with a surprised face thought. But the phrase good person can't be written on a resume. Would you like some tomato juice? The woman asked Ji-hwa. Yes, he replied with a parallel feeling of fear. A person who is kind to people almost always don't have many virtues, thought the hero to himself. Too heavy, he said looking at the bag full of food. Let's go back 10 minutes. I understand that you insist on taking food with you, because of that I can't refuse. But my bag is already really heavy, said Ji-hwa to the woman holding the heavy bag. I can give more if you don't mind. The woman kept insisting with a smile on her face. Because of that it was impossible to refuse. Okay, agreed the main underdog in this story. Now. Hey kids, mistress is calling you to the building, it's too hot outside, said Ji-hwa walking over to the playground. Why? Came a cry from the playground. But we want to play a little longer, screamed and cried the child. Shouldn't you speak better of the head teacher? Shouted the second child. Quite right. But now we are on a level playing field, loser buys the snacks, said the hero in his head, parallelly listening to the whining of the children. Kids these days can really walk and be outside that much? Although, maybe it's because we don't have any computers and consoles in our kindergarten, thought Ji-hwa with a face like a genius. Immediately, a genius thought came to mind. If I give you some goodies, will you stop playing outside and go inside the building? The crying stopped. Oh, I'm already running to the building. Give me some goodies, please. Give me some chips. Do you have any breadcrumbs? I want breadcrumbs, shouted the children, and there were many such cries and requests. I don't have any breadcrumbs, but I do have a very tasty pie, said the man in the focus of this story, looking horrified, as if he'd already been beaten somewhere. But why? I don't want to eat it. I don't like it. I want breadcrumbs, screamed the child. Why have I always loved pie now and in the past? Ji-hwa thought, remembering how he was praised. Still, they look happy, he thought as he watched the kids eating and having fun going into the building. I gave away everything the teacher gave me, it doesn't matter if I shared it all with the kids, said the main character looking into his empty bag. He lifted his head up, stared at the empty offices of the building. Standing there, watching, standing. Now it really looks like I'm the only one who goes here, said Ji-hwa, looking at his kindergarten school, under the sunlight. The next moment, a balloon appeared, which then rolled exactly to the character's feet. Where did that ball roll in from? He wondered. That's odd, all the kids left the playground from where? Ji-hwa saw someone and crossed his gaze. It was a little girl who noticed him looking at her. She was standing behind the village, trying to absurdly hide, standing so that her head was visible on one side and her feet on the other. The protagonist stared at her in bewilderment. Hello? This is your ball, right? Ji-hwa said uncertainly. The girl instantly hid behind a tree. Why aren't you inside the building? All the kids went in there a long time ago. Right, child? He said, trying to smile at her. I'm not just a child, came a voice from behind a tree. First of all, my name is Un. The girl introduced herself, stepping out from behind a tree. Your name is Un? Your Uni, that is me, has a name that starts the same way, Ji-hwa, he said to the girl who was hugging a tree out of fear, giving her back the ball. The girl looked at Ji-hwa and pierced him with her gaze. The sun is really hot today. Because of this, everyone is already inside. Don't you think it would be necessary for small Un to go inside the building too? Said the main character with a very shaky voice. That child has a very drilling look in her eyes. Pondered the girl, looking directly at him. I'll go inside if you take a little time to play with me. Okay? The girl said shyly, lowering her eyes down. Are you sure? Ji-hwa clarified, leaning over to Un. Then, let's go over there to the big field and play. She pointed to the empty soccer field. Un stood and asked to play. So she acted like that because she thought I'd forbid her from playing? Thought the protagonist in his head. Well, except to play a little, he replied to Un. Sounds of joy were emitted. Yeah! Yay! Shouted Un, glowing with joy. So I'll stand here and you throw me the ball, please, Uni, said the girl, running to the starting position. Okay, Ji-hwa answered her. I'll use the techniques I used when I was younger. He thought out in his head how to play with the kids. Come on, throw it. Hurry up, Uni, shouted the girl, waving her hand. Memories came over him of playing together with his friends. He couldn't do anything. It was like he was in a trance. NNI! Uni! The girl was yelling the whole time. So Ji-hwa threw the ball, but it flew to a completely different place than planned, namely the goal, which was a roadway next to it. Both of them didn't understand why this happened. How did I even throw the ball there? With a misunderstanding of the situation, he asked himself. How could you throw the ball over there? This is dangerous. Un was angry at the main character. Please forgive me. Ji-hwa apologized. I'll go get him, he said, feeling guilty. No, it's okay, stay here, I'll go get him myself. Un answered him. Un ran to the ball, coming out of the kindergarten area. Why did this particular memory show me, at this exact moment? Ji-hwa asked to himself. All right, let's go play inside the building, said the hero, transferring his gaze to Un. And then he noticed that Un runs out into the roadway to get a ball, and a truck comes straight at her. The driver doesn't notice her because he is talking on the phone at that moment. But still the driver notices the girl, brakes sharply, but the truck continues to move forward with inertia, straight at the girl. Ji-hwa tries her best to run to the road. He rushes with all his might toward the road, glaring at the truck and Un. Un picks up the ball without seeing anything. The protagonist is trying to get through to her. The girl didn't hear him at first. Un heard him. Then she notices this truck, looks at it with fear in her eyes. But then Ji-hwa pushes Un out from under the wheels of the truck. My body moved on its own, I didn't even have time to think about it, thought Ji-hwa in flight. The last thing he saw was that he was able to save Un by pushing her away. He gets hit by a truck. There was only a moment of regret for what I had done, But then the anxiety began. Because all I saw in front of me was endless darkness. Old Korean-style city, colors, life is raging, people are having fun and socializing. It's a beautiful, vibrant city. It is likely that illegal immigrants have infiltrated Sector 11. The Lion is taking the necessary measures. The anicaps exchange will be closed today. We apologize for the inconvenience. A citywide alert sounded. I repeat, illegal immigrants in Sector 11. The alert continues to say as the main character looks at buildings unknown to him. If you recognize anything or see anything, contact the Lion immediately. The unknown voice in the alert continued. He doesn't realize where he is and looks around. What the hell is this? Where am I? Ji-hwa said with surprise and incomprehension. We hope you have a very fitting day today, posthumously. The unknown voice finished at that. Where am I? Where have I gone? Is this a dream? Ji-hwa thought, looking at the buildings and people around him. Hey, Mr. Lion! Someone shouted in the crowd of people. Didn't you say the stock exchange was closed? Then why are the fares going up tomorrow? I was planning to visit a neighboring division today. What about the fact that we are incurring huge losses because of this? Came the shouts from the angry crowd of people. And behind the crowd, the protagonist doesn't understand what's going on at all. What the F? Why can't they see anything, even after shoving a man? Ji-hwa thought in his head as he sat on the pavement, looking at this crowd. Oops! Came a sound close to the crowd, and of course the curious protagonist wondered what happened there. When will it end? Said an elderly woman, while picking up the fallen groceries. Excuse me. Are you all right? Ji-hwa asked her, and helped the lady pick up the groceries from the floor. He looked up and saw strange flying objects that looked like doors. What are those strange flying objects? Ji-hwa thought with astonishment as he looked up into the sky. Hey! Came a sound from the direction of the woman. Do you like baked goods? Help yourself, she said, handing the protagonist a white bun. Thank you so much for helping me out. Baking is the least I can offer you, said the woman with a smile on her face as she continued to offer the bun to him. You're welcome, it was nothing, replied Ji-hwa to her. Oh, these new souls act like they don't know anything. Looking at your ignorance of the whole situation, you must be new? Granny asked as she stood behind the bakery counter. Do she? Thought Ji-hwa in surprise. More important is the fact that I don't have any money, he said with chagrin. You have no money? But you have a bracelet. God, are they so busy with the old illegals that they forget to control and deal with the new ones? Just stay here, I'll call the Lion for you, the woman said as she walked to the phone. When did this appear on my arm? Wondered the main character looking at the black bracelet on his arm. And no, it's just, he said, looking at the sign of the bakery shop. What are those words? Ji-hwa asked himself, seeing the incomprehensible symbols on the street in front of him. Just eat and don't worry about anything, the woman told him, placing the bun in his hands. Everything that has happened to you is your destiny. So I hope you'll come back to see me again, said the grandmother to the protagonist, smiling at each other. Some too vivid and colorful dream, thought Ji-hwa in his head as he walked down a street unknown to him, eating a pastry. Stay where you are! Came a threatening shout from an unknown man in a black suit. He snatched up a chain and in one motion wrapped it around the hero's arm that even the bun flew far away. You can't eat food in the afterlife if you're an illegal immigrant, the man with the chain continued to say, looking directly at the incomprehensible Ji-hwa. You're Lotus, right? The man said, menacingly walking straight at the protagonist. This pale man with long black hair corrected his black cloak and hid the chain, introducing himself. I am Flame, the messenger of the afterlife from the 11th Division. Please follow me, he continued, looking at the protagonist with a disdainful look. They came to a beautiful building, where Ji-hwa saw even more people like Flame. Lotus! It's you, right? My name is Mr. A pink-haired girl introduced herself with a smile on her face, wearing the same black attire as Flame. Sorry for the wait, I was running like hell, she continued. It's okay, it's not your fault that you were recognized as an illegal immigrant. There have even been times when people who didn't die ended up here, Mista continued to say, explaining the situation to the hero. We tried to change the term illegal, but the top government refused the bill. I apologize for all the inconvenience caused, soon all problems will be solved. She started apologizing to him. Can I go back to my life? I'll have a huge problem if I die now. There was a child at the place of my death, said Ji-hwa with apprehension. Mista hesitated and looked away from the neg as if she was guilty of something. And the protagonist looked at her without understanding anything. Understand, she started to say with a pale face. You ate the pastries, remember? Mista continued, with the same guilty voice. One day, if someone tastes even a small piece of the food of the afterlife, their soul will stay here forever. She spoke while Ji-hwa looked at her with pent-up eyes. I mean, right now, it's going to be, how shall we say, a bit difficult for you to go back to the living world. We try to prevent such occurrences, but, she continued to say, pausing briefly in her speech. In your case, we're a little late, she said, clutching her laptop in her hands. Sorry, she said guiltily, saying it very quietly, remembering the person who was supposed to stop the main character. Was it really that shocking to you? She added, looking at a pale Ji-hwa. What happened to you in the afterlife can be considered a complete failure, Mista said. Hearing what she said, the protagonist thought for a moment. Although, you can communicate with the person who saw your death in his dream, said Mista, the solution to this problem. It's fine, he answered her. If I'm really dead, there's nothing I can do about it, that's my fate. So what should I do in this place? No longer worried, with a calm voice, Ji-hwa said. Mrs. Mista? He asked, to the girl who stiffened at his words. Oh, forgive me, I was thinking. Your soul and all its components are already being transferred to the database of the afterlife. There is no way to stop this process. With a hurried and confused face, she said, looking at the tablet. If you think about it, a person who's over 80 can't even accept that he's in the afterlife. Then why is it that a man in his early 20s has been able to accept it so easily and is so calm? Mista reasoned in her head. Please confirm your status so that we can compensate you for any inconvenience we have caused you, on your merits, interests, and shortcomings, she said, holding out a fingerprint tablet to Ji-hwa. Merits, interests, and shortcomings? Ji-hwa thought in his head. Most people hide or don't know their flaws, and I recommend you not to hide them to get a decent compensation, Mista said with a relieved voice. She read out his status, and fell silent with a very surprised face. Urgent, is the head of the 11th Division here? Mista shouted with a surprised and parallel frightened face. The head of the 11th Division? He's always far away when seeing off souls, said an unknown man in the same black suit. Look at this. Mista held out the clipboard sharply. What's this? Asked another man in dark garb. This is the first time I've ever seen such numbers in my entire existence as a Reaper. We really need to call the chief, and preferably now, he continued. Please wait by the door. They turned to Ji-hwa. The door? He thought in a state of bewilderment. If it's that bad, we should get on the phone and find the chief immediately, heard the protagonist through the closed doors. All divisions in all 13 sectors have their own doors to hell. Hell is a place to remove all one's shortcomings, quietly and quickly. Mista's voice boomed. A person's shortcomings and merits can be considered the currency of the afterlife. They are the basic parameters of this world. She continues to speak. Some souls, even after many centuries of hard work, can't remove their flaws and enter heaven, said Mista, hurrying somewhere along with Ji-hwa. As far as I know, hell has a completely different function, he said, responding to her words. The living world's idea of hell is almost untrue, but there is still some truth to it. Mr. Oh, it's so hot, the man uttered as he stepped out of those very doors. These clothes and their design are too old, they don't function well like they used to. I need a new suit, said a man with a large black hat that made it impossible to see his face, while adjusting his suit, which was as black as night. Head of the 11th Division, shouted Mr. Yes, Mr. Show me why you summoned me, said the head in a calm, cold voice. Here you go, she uttered, holding out a clipboard directly into his hands. This new arriving soul has made a mess of our department, Mr. said, then immediately fell silent. Is it real? The head asked, in the same calm voice. Mr. nodded and said, Yes. Then it's very serious, he said, looking at the clipboard. But here Ji-hwa still didn't understand anything. Honestly, I've never seen numbers like this before, said the head thoughtfully. Yes, somewhat explain what's going on here, said the protagonist with incomprehension. Long story short, we won't be able to compensate you, said the head, handing the tablet to Mr. And why is that? Ji-hwa asked with even more incomprehension. You see, in life people do many good deeds, i.e. merits, and bad deeds, i.e. faults. The faults cannot be removed by good deeds. In other words, when you lived you accumulated both merits and demerits, and after death merits can be used as an erasure of demerits. The head quickly explained everything. However, he added at the end, you collected 999 billion, said the head, looking Ji-hwa straight in the eyes. Flaws? Said the protagonist with a trembling voice. Ha! Of course not, you only have 100,000 flaws, said the head with a smile. The head said, you have 999 billion merits, he added. What, is this possibly some kind of mistake? Ji-hwa asked with surprise and fear. The technology of the afterlife can never make a mistake, replied the head. That's an incredible number, perhaps there are even more, because the maximum allowable number of merits in the system is just 999 billion, he said thoughtfully. So what should I do? Ji-hwa asked. Mr. and the head thought for a moment, and a brilliant idea popped into their heads. Let's discuss it immediately, said the head. These reapers, thought Ji-hwa with a tired look on his face. So there's no way I can return to the living world anymore, right? Ji-hwa clarified. It's theoretically possible, but I won't vouch for your safety after that, said the head with his hands clasped behind his back. As I mentioned earlier, being part of two worlds at the same time, the living and the afterlife, can entail unknowable dangers. Who knows what could happen? He said calmly, looking at the facial expressions of Ji-hwa, who was calmly taking in the information, and Mr., who was looking at the protagonist with worry. So I've become, what, some sort of shaman? Ji-hwa asked Mr. Well, you could be considered that, but you're a shaman who has no god to worship, she replied, agreeing with him. Simply put, you live in a nice house, but it has no owner, clarified the head. Plus, for rent and other necessities you don't have to pay, he added. And the protagonist and Mr. immediately thought of an abandoned haunted house. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ji-hwa and the head immediately noticed it, looking at the door at the same time. Don't worry, it happens sometimes. There's someone living there too, like this door to Elysium, for example, said the head, calmly waving his hand. Let's have a seat. Since Ji-hwa has already eaten pastries, let's order something else. They sell a lot of different goodies here, said the head as he reassured the hero. These knocks are surely a common thing? Ji-hwa says with fear. All right, it'll be faster and better if I do it like this, said the head, pulling out his wand. He surrounded the table they would sit at with a barrier of black mist. I think this will do, the head said with relief, putting the wand back in his pocket. Amazing, thought Ji-hwa looking at this fog. Sit down, make yourself at home, said the head, pointing to a chair. All right then, I'll go get us some food, said Mr. leaving to get some food with a cheerful mood. So this is what the afterlife looks like? The hero asked, looking around, remembering the streets and buildings he had seen. Well, yes, in your living world, the afterlife is represented in a completely different way, replied the head to Ji-hwa's question. Does this place evolve over time, just like the living world? The hero continued to question. Yes, many centuries ago, King Yamna was here. He put forward the idea that the entire afterworld was supposed to evolve at the same pace as the living world. The head gave a brief history of the afterworld. And there are dead kings of different countries of the living world here? Ji-hwa asked with a curious look. Yes, there are, the head answered him. Each country has its own version of the afterworld, its own king, and its own administrators. He went on to say as he continued the story of the afterworld, explaining on his fingers. So territories with large populations have to compete with each other, said Ji-hwa, whereupon the head sighed at the stupidity of the protagonist. Each territory has their own system, often they increase the number of posts they need. King of the Dead is just the name of the position, said the head, hoping the hero understood. So, Ji-hwa said with a slight pause, can the position of King of the Dead be re-elected? He finished saying in a serious voice. The head tapped his fingers on the table and thought for a moment, and replied. Administrators of other countries have never done it, but in Korea, it happens regularly. Can we count that as presidents? But other countries have presidents too, am I right? Would it be okay to ask even more questions? The main character asked himself. I don't know if it's okay to ask him who's dead and who's alive. Ji-hwa continued to think as he watched the head sit calmly with his arms folded. The previous king of the dead disappeared without any trace. After that incident, this position has been changing regularly, he said as he lowered his head down. Are they choosing a new king of the list of reapers and former kings? Ji-hwa asked. Neither kings nor reapers can be chosen, so they cannot assume the position of king of the dead, replied the head to him, calmly answering. And yet, he wanted to continue, but was interrupted. Oh, everything is so heavy. I'm back. It was Mista who walked in, along with the food. Ji-hwa, do you like sweets? All the reapers from the 11th Division love sweets, including me, she said with a bright smile from the food in front of her. Why not? The main character replied to her. Mista picked up a cloche and the protagonist was just shocked at what he saw. Wow, they're here too? Said Ji-hwa in his head, looking at the colorful desserts. Now, it's a very popular thing, macaroons, very tasty, said the head looking at the macaroon in his hands. They also call them fat caroons. Mista complimented her boss' words. Meanwhile the hero watched and marveled. Not macaroons? Fat caroons, is it because they are a bit bigger? Really? Ji-hwa thought in his head. Okay, if even the reapers eat them, I can have one. I used to eat them before anyway. His thoughts were interrupted because someone knocked on the door again. It happens sometimes, so don't worry, we've told you about it before, Mista said with her mouth full. All the time? Ji-hwa asked. Yeah, the door should stop shaking soon, it's just someone raging inside, said the head. But the door keeps shaking harder and harder. Shouldn't it stop? The hero asked. That's the weird part. It should really stop by now, said the head turning to the door. But then there was an explosion, the door opened and out came gusts of fire and various splinters. What happened? The head asked loudly, pulling out his wand. Chief, are you sure you closed the door completely? Said Mista, covering her face with her hand from the bright light. That's impossible. If I hadn't closed the door, our whole division would have been burned to the ground. Mista, get Ji-hwa out of here! Shouted the head loudly, and air reflected the entire stream of fire. Call for help. Tell the 11th Division to come quickly, he continued to say with difficulty. That's right, Mista replied. At this time, Ji-hwa sat on the floor leaning on the table, looking at this sight. He had a look of fear on his face. What will happen if I die? I'm already dead, aren't I? Thought the hero in his head. Ji-hwa, quickly follow me! Shouted Mista, running up to the table with her wand in hand. They reached out their hands towards each other. But Ji-hwa's hand moved away from Mista's hand. I can't move. I'm immobilized, he told her with fear in his words. Ji-hwa doesn't have the same suit, with full fire protection. If he stays in this fire, he'll just burn up. Mista analyzed the situations in her head. She ran towards him through the fire. Oh shit! Mista said, seeing that the fire was only getting bigger. When everyone gets here, let in those who can tolerate very hot temperatures, said the head, still holding the fire at the door. Mista noticed that the members of the 11th Division had approached. Hurry over here! Those who know how to control fire, quickly to the chief, those who wield ice or water, lower the temperature, she shouted to all the incoming reinforcements. The fire kept growing. Chief, we're in position as you ordered, said the division member. And Ji-hwa continued to stare at this horrible yet beautiful sight. Stay away! Strengthen the barrier and calm the fire, then everything will be fine, said the head's plan of action for the entire division. But here the fire only intensifies, and completely destroying the barrier, knocking back all the people in that room. The head of division and Mista noticed the raging fire that was blowing everything out of its path. The fire also approaches the main character, knocking over a table. Protect the deceased! Shouted the head. Damn it! He said, looking at his cracked wand. The hero looked at this Armageddon and couldn't believe his eyes. Ji-hwa was already preparing for his second death, but suddenly a chain suddenly appeared and threw a hazmat suit over him. Why is the door still open? Said the man who had helped the hero survive. Yom! Mista ran up to the man with long black hair. Reaper Yom arrived after completing the mission as you said. It was Flame who also came to help. He chained the door, and with a sharp pull he slammed it shut. Finally, said Yom, looking at the door as if it was the easiest thing for him to do. Flame tightened the door firmly with the chains and asked, What's going on here? The division head turned to Yom. Why hasn't anyone figured out where to put an illegal immigrant? Flame asked his chief, alluding to the Ji-hwa sitting behind him. Why are the police to remove illegal immigrants inactive? Ji-hwa asked, speaking as usual with a serious expression on his face, expressing his dismay and bewilderment. Oops, he pointed out, to the surprised Ji-hwa sitting next to him. No, I didn't say anything bad about you, Flame said to the main character, who was still sitting in his cape. Right now you can argue, protest our words and actions, as you are currently a victim, Yom explained in front of Ji-hwa, speaking in a sluggish and guilty voice. The term illegal immigrant itself is quite old, it's just that the law hasn't abolished it yet, he continued. Are you alright? Flame asked the main character, who was shocked to hear such words from a purposeful and formidable man like Yom. Why is his face like that? Maybe he's overheated in this heat, Flame thought in his head. It would be best to leave this room, now. I'll get something to cool you off, he said, in a slightly soothed voice, leaning in front of the hero. Basically, the gate shouldn't rage that much, and the head of the 11th Division will be fine. But maybe it's because after all the visits we've made to all the gates, they must be tired of holding the full force of hell. It was bound to happen sooner or later, Yom thought and analyzed as he looked at the chained scarlet doors. Ji-hwa looked at the people leaving and just standing in the room, and then said, Yes, then let's leave now. Take my hand so you can stand up without any trouble, Flame said, holding out his pale hand to him. Ji-hwa was already extending his shaking hand. But he suddenly pulled her away abruptly, in a calm, quiet voice saying, I'm fine, I'll do it myself. I'm fine. I'm myself. I'm fine, said Ji-hwa to himself in his head, struggling to get up, leaning on his knees. Okay, where could we continue our very important conversation? He asked, looking at the hidden face of the head. Please follow me, let's go to the meeting room, the head said while pointing with a purple-gloved hand. Walking into the conference room, the entire 11th Division was already sitting in their seats. There was a special seat reserved for Ji-hwa. The division chief waited for everyone to take their seats and set up everything he needed. Then, Head started the conversation, looking at the seated protagonist. So, is there any Reaper here who is willing to help Ji-hwa for the rest of his current life? The leader asked the entire audience. All the Reapers sat silent, no one even moved. The protagonists no longer hoped for anything and just looked at the entire division as if they were mannequins. But then someone raised their hand sharply. We can't vouch for him, we're all busy, we've got our own things to do, said an unknown Reaper with a hat that just about symbolized them. We all spend the dead, a lot of people die every day, replied to the Reaper's words, the head looking him straight in the eye. And you can't watch over a dead man? Added the chief to his own words. A discussion began, in the midst of which Ji-hwa sat silent and still. I'm on it, said the man, raising his hand, with a very familiar voice. I brought him here, so I guess I'm the one who has to deal with him, Yom said, holding his hand out, while the hero looks at him with a very surprised look. Yom? The head asked in surprise. This assignment is an ordinary assignment, without honor, and is not impossible. Besides, why did Yom choose this assignment almost instantly? Any other Reaper could have handled this task, the head thought in his head as he leaned back in his chair. Well, if that's the way you want it, so be it, the head said, approving Flame for the role. But I still wonder why he volunteered. He continued to think. Yom noticed Ji-hwa's surprised face. I'm sorry, maybe it was more comfortable for you if the Reaper was female? Flame asked uncertainly. Oh, no, it wasn't. That's not the reason at all, the protagonist reassured him. Yom happily exhaled a sigh of relief. If Ji-hwa becomes uncomfortable, I can merge into the shadows, and I might not even show my face, he said in a cheerful voice. Don't show your face? Ji-hwa hesitated, not understanding how Flame would do that. Well, okay, replied the protagonist to him. What about the other problems? Let's discuss your return to the world of the living, Yom said as he looked away from Ji-hwa. The next moment the head told them to come up to his desk. With a flick of his finger, he summons a black and purple spark. We are fortunate that no damage was done to your soul, said the head, withdrawing from his hand a thin, black gust of energy that swept through the entire audience and crashed into the suddenly round, old doors. Amazing, thought Ji-hwa. It's a gateway to the world of the living, only the head of the 11th Division can summon them anywhere, Yom said in a whisper, leaning over to the surprised hero. I want to discuss more with you and apologize well. It would be better if you came back sooner, said the head turning to Ji-hwa. The longer body and soul are apart, the harder it will be for you to adapt again, he added, addressing the protagonist. Good, Ji-hwa accepted the information. The head pulled out his wand and began conjuring incomprehensible things. A sprig of cherry blossom appeared right in front of him. This is my parting gift, he said, giving this sprig to Ji-hwa. What is this? The hero asked. I'll have to ask Yom about that later, the main character in the story thought in his head. You go that way, the head said, pointing to the door. Just as Ji-hwa started to open the door, he noticed the bracelet hanging on his arm. By the way, what about this? What's that black bracelet? The hero asked, turning to the head. Shouted the hero as he saw the bracelet begin to glow. The bracelet gradually began to turn red in color. And when Ji-hwa noticed this, and started just looking at this bracelet, looking at it, the protagonist looked at the audience with surprise. And the entire audience looked at Ji-hwa with horror and wonder too. Did something wrong? He thought as he continued to watch the Reaper's reaction. How could this happen? Yom asked himself while Ji-hwa looked at him with a confused look. That can't be, then what about this bracelet? The Reapers began to talk amongst themselves. It can't be. This is impossible. All the candidates for King Yom have already been chosen. One of the Reapers shouted out, pointing his finger at Ji-hwa. This has to be a mistake. Illegal entry at a time like this has led to a mistake. The unknown Reaper continued to speak his speech. Why? Asked in a trembling voice the hero, looking with horror at his audience. Why do they talk among themselves? Why do they only talk about what they know? Ji-hwa began to think nervously. Ian Ji-hwa, this might be hard to believe, but Yom began, with worry in his voice. Did I say that out loud? Thought the main character. Well, after learning that there is an afterlife, nothing surprises me anymore. Speak up, said Ji-hwa, looking at Flame's diverting gaze. You, Ian Ji-hwa, have just become a candidate for the position of the King of Yom. If you pass the tests, you can become a full-fledged Yom rabbit and manage all the affairs of the afterlife. Yom briefly explained the entire situation to Ji-hwa. Wah, said the incomprehensible protagonist. Ruling the afterlife? He asked incredulously. Exactly, Yom answered him. What about my rights? Ji-hwa added. You don't have them, said Flame to the hero, who after those words simply floated from what he had heard. What in life that even after death, I have to be the head of a huge project, thought Ji-hwa. Just gently push me so I crash, he said in his head. And as if hearing his thoughts, the head's purple hand shoved him from the back. Ji-hwa hadn't expected it. He stared at the ever-dwindling form of the head, falling parallel into the black void, like a traveler lost in time and space, where the dead and the living merge into one unattainable dimension. The dazzling light of white fluorescent lamps and their crackles. People stand by their sick loved ones, giving them hope for life. People in white coats run along the long corridors as if they were guardian angels, carefully watching every step of the patients. Ambulances stand near the entrance, ready to go to help people. Upon waking up, Ji-hwa immediately opened his eyes and couldn't believe them. Is this a hospital? The hero asked to himself, hearing the beeping from the life support machine and seeing the curtains around him. So all this stuff about the afterlife, the king candidate, the reapers, the gates of hell, was just a dream? I don't like the fact that I have such an active imagination, thought the chief, remembering what he had experienced when he was dead. Ji-hwa exhaled and lay down on his soft, long-awaited bed. I don't feel any pain or fatigue at all. Did they give me painkillers? I should sleep more after all this stress, thought the hero with his eyes closed, as suddenly. Are you awake? Said a suddenly appearing, already short-cropped Yom. When Ji-hwa heard this, his heart sank into his heels. What, Mr. Yom? What are you doing here? The main character stood up abruptly in surprise. You were discounted as a test. Chapter 11 sent you to the realm of the dead. We were amazed that you got out of there, said Yom, explaining to him what happened. Ji-hwa remembers a little bit by little what happened in the auditorium. Oh right. It wasn't a dream, said the hero sadly. Normally, every candidate for the position of King Yom has a reaper loyal to him. You must place your reaper as an assistant, or bodyguard. Flame tells Flame all the nuances of the election for the position of king. However, it's a highly sought-after position among reapers. It's what they write their CV on to promote themselves. He continued. Even if their candidate doesn't get the role of King Yomna, this position is still a significant argument for promotion, said Yom, reminding Ji-hwa of the audience's reaction to the hero becoming a candidate. If Ji-hwa is going to stay longer in the afterlife, he should know that, Yom continues to say without interruption, finally understanding the protagonist. Being chosen to be a candidate, after entering illegally, is a very big deal, but that situation instantly changed because the appearance of a new candidate made the whole situation worse. Continued and finished explaining to Flame as if he was a robot. But now that I think about it, it's like I've been run over by a huge lorry. but I don't feel any pain, said Ji-hwa as he examined his hands. Yeah, after all you've been through, it couldn't be otherwise. This is the power of the resurrecting flower that was given to you by the head of the 11th division, said Yon, remembering the branch that looked like a sakura branch. Resurrection flower? Said Ji-hwa in surprise. Exactly, replied Flame. I heard that this tree was given to him from the head of the 7th division, and the resurrection flower of the tree, which was grown by the 7th division head, had medicinal properties, and it is highly valued among all reapers. Yon recalled the stories of other reapers. It was a situational compensation for souls that had passed wrongly. But here, the situation is different since you became a candidate for King Yon, he continued, speaking in a calm, cold voice. Why? Ji-hwa asked with an incomprehensible expression on his face. Because King Yom's position will be re-elected for the 20th time, said Yom with a serious voice. Hasn't it only been a few centuries since the last king disappeared? Ji-hwa thought with interest. The re-election period is frequent, of course. He said this already in a low voice. Because almost no one is ready to become king, they are selected by the spirit of King Yom himself personally, so the reign periods are shortened, explained Flame. What does that have to do with my compensation? The hero added. Coughing from the long conversation, Yom began to continue speaking. After the 11th election of the king, elections became a contest. Frames, trials, and other such things were broadcast to the entire afterlife. Even souls in the afterlife could vote and support their favorite. There are only 1,000 candidates to start a business, but you, Ji-hwa, became the 1,001st. What? Said the main character. Even here, I managed to be the last one? Thought Ji-hwa. I can already imagine what kind of campaigning there is. The main character began to fantasize. Support symbolizes your voters. In this situation, the resurrection flower can be used to promote the candidacy. Yom told Yom an interesting idea. To be announced soon. Before he could finish his thesis, he was interrupted. Ji-hwa, are you alive? Abruptly the teacher ran in, while not seeing Yom. Teacher, it's good to see you, exclaimed Ji-hwa happily. Oh my God, I almost had a heart attack when I found out you were hit by a lorry. I didn't know you were that tough, she said, taking his hand. Me neither, the hero answered her. I guess it's because of the resurrection flower, Ji-hwa thought in his head. Meanwhile, Yom had just left the chamber. Ji-hwa, who is that man? Is he your boyfriend? The teacher asked with a smirk, in a cheerful voice. No, of course not, shouted Ji-hwa. How could she even think of that? And why can ordinary people see him? Pondered the hero. And while the teacher and Ji-hwa were talking in the ward, Yom decided to get himself a drink. All right then. But realistically, who is that? Your ex? The teacher continued talking about strange things. Well, no. He's not. The hero interrupted because he didn't know how to explain to her who Yom was. He's more like my insurance agent. Ji-hwa excused himself after all. This day was on the level of my dreams, though even without the mysticism, the main character said in a languid voice, looking up at the beautiful evening sky. I just saw your teacher off, said Yom. Thank you. Ji-hwa thanked him. That is now my duty as your assistant, Flame answered him. It's strange to hear from the Reaper that he was seeing off a person and not seeing off a soul, thought Ji-hwa looking at him. When you return to the afterlife, the first thing you should do is look at your place on the candidate leader list, said Yom, looking at the tablet from the afterlife. Place on the candidate leaderboard? The hero asked interestedly, turning round to face Yom on his way home. Well, as they used to say, there are merits and demerits. Long ago, faults were punished with very harsh penalties. Things have changed now, but there is a sin meter on the leader list, said Flame. And what is valued more, merits or demerits? Ji-hwa continued to pile on with questions. Flaws, in other words sins, are easy to commit, but merit is much harder to obtain, said Yom. Very obvious things, pointing his finger at the pedestrian crossing where one man had shoved a woman and ran away, while another helped her up. However, he added, a candidate for the role of King Yom must possess values that are above merit and shortcomings. One day, your values will be verified, transmitted and registered in the afterlife, and then make that information available to everyone, said Yom, referring to the candidate's personal information in the afterlife as he approached Ji-hwa's house. Just for everyone? The hero decided to clarify. Remember I told you that the election was going to be kind of a contest? Flame reminded him. So according to these values, souls will choose their favorites and sponsor them, he said as he watched the main character in the story open the door of his house. But Yom doesn't know whether to continue the topic of conversation. Originally, there were only a few memorable candidates, he went on to say. But Ji-hwa didn't understand what he meant. Taking off their shoes, they sat down at a table in the middle of the room, and there the hero already continued the conversation. Can you look at my stats, with your tablet? No, I don't have the right to do that. It's not like it's public information about a deceased person, Flame answered him. Candidates have to give all the necessary data first, said Yom. Like fingerprints or eye gray? Ji-hwa asked, having watched a lot of films and remembering what Mista had told him. Well, no, it's a little bit different, replied Flame to his question. Forgive me, said Yom, taking the hero's hand to examine and tell him about the bracelet. It is the symbol of the candidate. If you ask for this bracelet, Ji-hwa, it will instantly release its power. He told about the manifestation of the power of the bracelet. You're saying that to summon the bracelet's abilities, you just have to ask for it? Ji-hwa thought with a small smirk. It would be very, very frustrating if I couldn't do that. What if I really just resurrected after being hit by a lorry? But why did fate choose me? The protagonist thought with tension and incomprehension. All right, he mumbled. Preparing himself for something unimaginable, Ji-hwa let the energy of the bracelet pass through his body. Taking in a lungful of clean air, he loudly mouthed, Status! And before him appeared a golden, very bright, hanging plaque, with incomprehensible hieroglyphics, as if a portal to another dimension. At first the hero just stared at the tableau with incomprehension, trying to understand what these symbols were, as if he were reading a book in a foreign language. If you want, I can translate it into a language you can read and understand, Yom offered his idea. And then all the previously incomprehensible symbols were instantly translated into his native Korean. On the table were written all the statistics of the protagonist, his strength, his intelligence, his agility, his luck, his defense, and so on, revealing a panorama of his skills and characteristics. Ji-hwa and Yom looked at these stats carefully, and both of them were stupefied by what they saw, as if a curse had been placed on them. What is this? How is this possible? The hero asked himself, in an incomprehensible and surprised voice. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to put a bark and subscribe. These you say what you like, it's very motivating, thanks. Good luck to you.